Dozens of Hong Kong democracy activists are given prison sentences of up to 10 years. Taiwan's military police show off their training, including the motorbike skills that give them the run of the nation's capital. The leaders of China and the UK hold a rare meeting at the G20 summit in Brazil, the first in 6 years. Plus, as Taiwan gains popularity as a place to learn Mandarin, foreign students compete to show off their Chinese chops in Taipei. Good evening and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Eric Gao. A Hong Kong court has sentenced dozens of democracy activists to lengthy jail terms under a Beijing-backed national security law. As John Van Trieste reports, some people here in Taiwan are watching with concern.
It's another massive blow for Hong Kong's democracy movement. 2 years after their arrest, 45 of the Chinese territory's top democracy activists have now been given lengthy prison sentences. Their crime? Organizing a legislative primary race in 2020. It was nothing official, but the high turnout spooked both local officials and Beijing. They've been accused of trying to overthrow the government and were formally convicted of subversion. Among their number are well-known protest leaders, but the harshest sentence of 10 years has gone to the man accused of being the ringleader, legal scholar Benny Tai. Ever since mass protests in 2019 and the passage of a controversial national security law, the vice has been tightening on dissidents. Even before the sentencing, the girlfriend of defendant Ventus Lau knew what was coming.
呢個 case 對香港成個民主派咪就係一網打盡咯，即係咪就係其實呢班人叫做冇㗎啦，呢一刻即係社會性死亡㗎啦，喺政治舞台上都係死亡㗎啦，暫時。
Outside observers also say it's a critical time for the movement, and that even moderates may be in danger.
Hong Kong's democratic movement essentially has been put to a stop. It doesn't mean that people in Hong Kong are not still aspiring for democracy. It doesn't mean that there are no people in Hong Kong who would still fight for democracy. But as an organized movement, it has effectively been put to a stop.
As the city's freedoms, promised under the agreement that saw Britain return Hong Kong to China, disappear, observers in Taiwan, like lawmaker Puma Shen, are growing alarmed. China claims Taiwan and regularly threatens the use of force. Shen is now among several prominent names on China's blacklist of alleged die-hard Taiwan independence supporters.
香港现在在发生的事情，就是未来台湾就是要面对的事情。那反而大家对这件在台湾，大家对这件事情的警觉性，我认为是非常非常不够。
As the openness and exuberance that once characterized Hong Kong fade, the question these observers across the strait are asking is what Taiwan can learn to avoid the same kind of fate. Ryan Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Multiple people were hurt after an SUV plowed into students and pedestrians outside a primary school in Hunan, China. Verified videos posted on social media show several injured people lying on the ground after the attack. They also show an unidentified man fleeing a damaged car and being attacked by several bystanders. Chinese state media is reporting an unconfirmed number of injuries, none of them life-threatening. It is the third large-scale violent attack in the country in just over a week. Much of the public outcry over the violence has been censored within China. Taiwan's military police force is showing off some of its training. Unlike other military branches, this unit is responsible for making sure that the country's president and other political leaders are safe in the event of a war. Jaime Ocon reports from the command center in Taipei.
Taiwan's military motorcycle squads spring into action at the command center in Taipei. These soldiers are part of the country's 5,000-strong military police force, and soldiers here are demonstrating their driving skills, mostly used in peacetime scenarios.
那在平时的时候，我们也负责正副元首就职、春秋季礼宾以及国家重大庆典等前导警卫任务。
While military police forces around the world are usually tasked with safeguarding military bases, Taiwan's military police has a much bigger responsibility. One of the main characteristics of Taiwan's military police is the use of motorcycles to better maneuver around an urban environment. That's because one of their core missions is to protect the capital city of Taipei. In the event of a war, Taiwan's army is responsible for protecting the country's borders, making sure an enemy can't land on the island. But stationed in the interior, Taiwan's military police is tasked with protecting government buildings and leaders from danger. That's why the command center is just 10 minutes away from the presidential office. But they're not just stationed in the capital. Nationwide, these soldiers work hand in hand with other branches of the military like the army, diversifying responsibilities to provide Taiwan with a robust defense. They also work with local police and law enforcement to handle everything from terrorism to sabotage.
他可能会在 urban， 就是他平常就很熟悉市区，所以他可以协助你刚才讲 CI 这 critical infrastructure。那宪兵就居于中间，因为他可以处理这个民间的事情，也就是 civilian affairs， 所以他出现就是处理的话，会比 regular army 来的方便。
While the majority of the military police are focused on protecting major cities all across the country, soldiers here at the command center in Taipei have just a bit more pressure, tasked with defending the heart of Taiwan. Alex Chen and Jaime Okan in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has met with Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Brazil. With Starmer promising to strengthen UK-China relations, it could signal a thawing in ties between the two sides. Cadence Quaranta reports.
A rare meeting. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Chinese President Xi Jinping come together at the G20 summit in Rio de Janeiro. Starmer is the first UK Prime Minister to meet the Chinese president in 6 years. Xi and Starmer, who was elected in July, both emphasized the need for a strong relationship and broader collaboration between the UK and China, a significant turning point after years of heightened tensions.
秉持战略伙伴定位，坚持相互尊重、开放合作、交流互鉴，实现互利互赢，在世界变局中开辟中英关系的新局，更好体现两国关系的时代价值。
We want our relations to be consistent, durable, respectful, as we have agreed. Avoid surprises where possible, and strengthened dialogue should provide stronger understanding.
Starmer is promising to work together with China on areas like trade and climate change, topics also high on the agenda at the G20 summit in Brazil. This year, the world's leading economies issued a joint statement calling for more humanitarian assistance in Gaza, cooperation on climate change and global poverty, and a reform of the UN Security Council. They've also announced a new global alliance to combat poverty and eradicate hunger.
Compete aos que estão de volta desta mesa a inadiável tarefa de acabar com essa chaga que envergonha a humanidade. Por isso, colocamos como objetivo central da presidência brasileira no G20 o lançamento de uma aliança global contra a fome e a pobreza.
China used the summit to emphasize its dedication to supporting developing countries, with Xi announcing measures designed to help the global south, including launching an initiative to help countries access innovative science and technology. But the summit was overshadowed by uncertainty over how U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's policies will affect these goals, with U.S. President Joe Biden leaving office in about 2 months.
This is my last G20 summit. We've made progress together, but I urge you to keep going. I'm sure you will, regardless of my urging or not.
Biden also making a plea to world leaders to continue supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia, and the last appearance he'll make as president with so many leaders on the global stage. James Lin and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
U.S. President-elect Donald Trump says he will use military assets to carry out a mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. A social media commentator wrote that Trump would declare a national emergency to authorize the use of U.S. troops to detain immigrants for deportation. Trump replied, "True." Trump has said several times that he will use the National Guard to strengthen immigration and customs enforcement. Trump has promised the largest mass deportation in U.S. history. He says it will begin on his first day in office on January 20th. As Ukraine marks 1,000 days since Russia's full-scale invasion, weary troops continue battling on numerous fronts. Kyiv is hit by frequent missile strikes, and officials are preparing for what Trump's administration could mean for the war. Rosie Greninger reports.
A makeshift memorial in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, as residents here mark 1,000 days of war with Russia. Russia has occupied at least 160,000 square kilometres of Ukraine in their almost 3-year invasion, or around 27% of the country. Unusual Russian troop movement was first reported on Ukraine's border in November 2021, and after months of failed crisis talks, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced what he called a special military operation in Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022. The leader saying it was in defense of Russian citizens in Ukraine.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции. Ее цель – защита людей, которые на протяжении 8 лет подвергаются издевательствам, геноциду со стороны киевского режима. И для этого мы будем стремиться к демилитаризации и денацификации Украины.
In the hours that followed, hundreds of thousands of Russian troops invaded the former Soviet bloc nation from 6 directions, seeking to encircle and capture Kyiv. Military analysts expected Russia to quickly seize control, but rather than surrender, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky remained defiant, ordering a general mobilization.
Ми вже видаємо зброю і будемо видавати для захисту нашої землі всім бажаючим, всім спроможним захищати наш суверенітет. Від кожного громадянина України залежить майбутнє нашого українського народу.
And the US hit Russia with a wave of sanctions that crippled its economy. But Putin refused to abandon the operation, bombarding Ukraine with missile strikes. Weary troops on both sides have now been fighting on numerous fronts for well over 2 years. It's become Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II. Ukraine has documented the death of 12,000 civilians and 24,000 wounded, but accurate figures are expected to be much higher. Military losses are a close-guarded secret, but estimates based on Western intelligence place them at hundreds of thousands in both Ukraine and Russia.
Саме важко, коли дізнаєшся, що хтось 300-й і ще гірше.
Ukraine's economy has also suffered greatly. Around 6 million Ukrainians have fled the country, and the residents who remain are suffering with food, water and electricity shortages due to consistent Russian attacks.
Як я сказав, війна стала частиною нашого життя, і як би це страшно не звучало, такі прильоти вже стали привичними в певній мірі. Я б сказав, що життя крутиться по кругу з бомбосховища і назад.
After relying on American funding for their defense against Russia, Ukraine now faces a new challenge, the inauguration of a new US president.
Chris, come here.
Assuming office in January, Donald Trump is expected to lead a serious diplomatic push to force Moscow and Kyiv into ending the war, including promises to cut funding to Ukraine. Some political analysts believe this may involve pressuring Ukraine to give up its aspirations of becoming part of the NATO military alliance and surrender territories currently occupied by Russia, and for Russia to relinquish their goals of demilitarizing Ukraine. The outgoing Biden administration is set to announce additional support for Ukraine in the coming days. But as Trump's return to the White House inches closer, it's left both Ukraine and Russia scrambling to improve their battlefield positions ahead of any negotiations in the fast-approaching new year. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Former President Tsai Ing-wen's office has confirmed that she will be traveling to Canada. Tsai is slated to speak at the Halifax International Security Forum to express Taiwan's hopes to safeguard freedom and democracy. The forum will be attended by hundreds of global officials and scholars. International trips by Taipei's senior politicians are sensitive as China rejects Taiwan's sovereignty. But just last month, Tsai was welcomed by European officials on a tour through the Czech Republic, France, and Belgium. Former Legislative Speaker Wang Jinping has met with veteran Chinese official Song Tao in China. Wang called for the joint pursuit of peace but stopped short of mentioning the hallmark 1992 consensus. That controversial policy has been a central part of Taiwan's main opposition Kuomintang's relationship with Beijing. It's an agreement that there is only one China and that Taiwan is part of that, but each side can interpret what that means for itself. In the meeting, Song Tao said Taiwan independence is incompatible with peace across the Taiwan Strait. Wang acknowledged shared Chinese roots, but he expressed hope that unresolved disputes can be put aside to work towards what he called a common cause. And coming up after the break, a street artist in Taipei fixes up his artwork that was defaced by graffiti, but he says he gets where the vandals are coming from.
From industrial parks in Taiwan to here in Vietnam, we're bringing you the latest in tech and business news right here on TaiwanPlus News.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Foreign students learning Mandarin had the chance to put their language skills to the test in an annual speech competition here in Taipei. The competition is fierce, as more foreign students now choose to come to Taiwan to learn the language rather than to China. Chris Gorn was there.
At this Mandarin speech competition, foreign students in Taiwan use wit, humor, and their singing voices to impress a panel of judges. Those with good enough language skills can win prizes of up to $600 and competitors from 17 countries have a wide range of reasons to learn the language.
I thought if I'm going to live in a different country, I think it's respectful that you should be able to at least speak the language. So I decided to come here to learn, to improve my quality of life here and make it easier for myself.
Actually, I belong to the diplomatic services of India. So our government decided to send a few of us to learn Chinese.
Most say they joined the competition for the challenge, though a few may have ulterior motives for joining.
Don't tell my teacher to skip class.
Whatever their reasons, they're taking part in a tradition that goes back more than 50 years. As this decades-old competition shows, Taiwan has long been a destination for those wanting to learn Mandarin, and its popularity is growing as fewer international students choose to study in China. Last year, more than 36,000 foreign students came to Taiwan to learn Mandarin. That's a slight increase over pre-pandemic levels. As for China, there's no officially published number of foreign language students. But since the COVID-19 pandemic, numbers of foreign students in China have dropped as geopolitical tensions have grown. For example, for the United States, the number of students studying in China has dropped from more than 25,000 about a decade ago to only around 700 last year. Teachers in Taiwan say there may be reasons for that.
我有的学生他两边都去过嘛，他们会觉得在台湾感觉上他们会觉得比较自由，可以自由自在的说自己想要说的话，然后生活也比较方便，因为毕竟台湾比较小啊。
Learning a foreign language, especially Mandarin, is hard. And these language learners have traveled across the world and volunteered to take on an even greater level of difficulty. They stand to gain a sense of accomplishment and maybe even some cash. Hank Xu and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
2 Taipei policemen have been fired after they were found to have secretly installed cameras in the women's bathrooms in their precincts. The officers were allegedly members of a secret online platform where illegal images are shared, including child pornography. There have been 2 other incidents this year of male police officers taking secret photos of their female colleagues. The Taipei Police Department says it is sweeping all of its buildings for any hidden cameras. A well-known pedestrian overpass in Taipei is set to be torn down, despite objections from locals. Neighborhood residents stalled work to demolish the overpass. They say the structure, which is featured in several classic movies and music videos, has cultural and historic value. But a panel of 6 experts has rejected efforts to list the overpass as a heritage structure. A new street art project in one of Taipei's largest skate parks was vandalized last week. One of the project's artists has begun fixing up his work. Covering one graffiti tag at a time, he opens up about being a street artist in Taipei and the challenges that comes with that. Wesley Lewis tells us more.
Restoring his vandalized work, this Taipei-based street artist who goes by DB has begun painting over graffiti left on his murals about a week ago. His work is featured in one of the capital's largest and oldest skate parks, located underneath the highway, right in the heart of the city. DB and his project collaborators, who collectively go by the name of Wild Open Arts, set out to create a piece that captures the dynamism in skateboarding. It had just been completed when vandalized.
以前我也是涂鸦的，所以我可以理解，为什么会想要这样做。但是，我们以前会这样做，是因为我们在体制外，对，就是一个 out of system， 对啊。那我们试着去进到体制内，然后去跟他们做沟通跟协调，对啊。那我们把这个距离感缩短，对啊。那让公部门的人他们可以去理解街头。
Street art was once heavily restricted in Taiwan, particularly when the country was under martial law from 1949 to 1987. It has since been used to brighten or revive certain areas, but it is still perceived as an underground art form. Most street artists must apply for licenses and are obliged to follow any regulations set up by property owners.
This mural project is a collaboration between the city government and street artists, with the former granting the latter access to this space, which means any graffiti done here not only damages the artist's work, but it also vandalizes public property.
There are penalties and fines for unauthorized graffiti, and few public venues in Taipei permit street art, which means opportunities like this skate park project are hard to come by. But despite the vandalism, the art that makes it onto public spaces are increasingly appreciated.
觉得蛮清新的，就是感觉没有那么的杂乱。
因为之前它是呈现比较多元化，比较没有那个整合的感觉。那我觉得现在有整合的感觉也蛮不错的。
我觉得很好看。
The skate park is located on land once part of a vast urban winery during Taiwan's Japanese colonial period. Now known as the Huashan 1914 Creative Park, the remaining buildings have been transformed into a multi-purpose gathering space, where local artists, craftspeople, and small businesses showcase their work. It's created a buzzing arts neighborhood, which includes the skate park, which has long been a site for graffiti.
我们旁边也保留了蛮多涂鸦的区域的，对啊，然后这方面也是我们想要去努力的方向。我们想要让这个地方有更多的文化可以去一直出现，对吧？不是一直被消灭这样子。
Though he knows there is no guarantee against future damage, DB remains committed to restoring his work, not only to preserve this collaborative expression of creativity, but to amplify Taipei's burgeoning street art culture. Klein Wang and Wesley Lewis for TaiwanPlus.
A group of women are running a cafe in Indonesia's most conservative province, breaking barriers in traditionally male-dominated social spaces. Tifty Wang reports.
28-year-old Kurata Ayuni makes a drink at her cafe in Banda Aceh, Indonesia. In a city known for its coffee shops, hers stands out because Morning Mama is run by women. It's a rarity in the conservative province, which is the only one in the Muslim-majority country that imposes Islamic law, also known as Sharia law. There are strict rules about how men and women can interact in public, and coffee shops are considered male-dominated spaces. It's something the 28-year-old owner wanted to address by opening a cafe of her own.
Apalagi kalau di Banda Aceh banyak stigma negatif yang memang yang memang membuat perempuan itu tidak bisa kemana-mana. Jadi orang Banda Aceh ini menganggap bahwa perempuan itu ya di rumah aja. A woman being housewife. Jadi memang nggak boleh berkarya, tidak boleh bekerja. Jadi ya udah coba lagi untuk banyak sharing-sharing sama teman-teman.
In the past, many coffee shops in the province were open 24 hours as a rare form of nightlife. But since late 2023, new restrictions mean they must close at midnight, and Banda Aceh imposed rules forbidding women from public areas after 11 p.m. But the owner says despite the rules, society has changed.
9 p.m. woman nggak boleh keluar lagi dari rumah kalau malam. Jadi kalau misalnya ada perempuan yang memang keluar malam, pasti dibilang perempuan tidak baik-baik gitu. Kalau misalnya memang sekarang karena Morning Mama tutup di 11 p.m. jadi memang ya udah sampai jam 11 malam juga perempuan masih ada di coffee shop gitu. Gitu sih, sangat berubah.
A year after opening, Kurata's cafe has become a warm space for female customers to gather with friends.
I just think that I feel more connection if I ask something with the women barista, or I don't feel any nervousness if I ask, what about this menu? What does this consist of? Like, it's more like talking with your sister.
And with each cup of coffee, she hopes to inspire other women in the province to step out of their comfort zone and create the spaces they want to see in their community. Kama Shri and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for joining us for TaiwanPlus News this evening. Head over to our website to see more of our reports or grab our app to get them on your mobile device. Now, for the cat lovers out there, we leave you with images from Rome's Super Cat Show. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. We'll see you next time.